creating a transfer student community. We plan to discuss how we created Transfer Redbirds at Illinois State University and really go into some of the building blocks that hopefully you can take away from this to eventually create a program like this at your own institution. So for today, we're kind of going to go over a few things. Obviously, we'll introduce ourselves and then talk a little bit about why we felt this was an important topic to even bring up today. We're then going to go over Transfer Redbirds in general and just really break down what that is at Illinois State, cover some of those building blocks that we hope you can take away from today to really be able to create your own organization at your university. Go over some opportunities that we've had as we've grown as an organization and reflect on some of the things that maybe we've could have done better and then the ways that we've even improved. And then hopefully we will have some time at the end for some Q&A as well. So we'll jump into introducing ourselves. As Holly said, my name is Morgan Johnson, and I'm one of our transfer admissions counselors at Illinois State University. I was a transfer student myself from Carl Sandburg College. I graduated from there in 2015 with my associate's degree and then transferred to Illinois State, where I graduated in 2017. I'm also currently working on my master's at ISU, so I really don't have any plans to leave soon and hopefully can continue to build upon this organization at ISU as well. And I'm going ahead and let my co-host introduce herself too.
Hi, my name is Jill. I am also an Illinois State University graduate. I graduated this past May in 2021. I earned my associate's degree at Highland Community College in Kansas. And I got my bachelor's degree in accounting at Illinois State. I was the president of Transfer Redbirds during my time at ISU. And I currently work as a national bank examiner for the OCC.
So really jumping into why we felt this topic was important. A recent study done by Harvard back in 2021 really determined that many students who were transferring into universities this past academic year were saying that they faced acute social isolation due to COVID-19 restrictions. And I know we felt that on our campus at Illinois State. We had professors and staff and other members around campus mentioning how students have said how they were isolated, how they felt very alone. And when classes were online, they had a hard time really acclimating to campus and get to know students. And so this was something that we felt was really important and kind of led into why we wanted to create a community like Transfer Redbirds. Jill was a student herself during this time, so I thought she would be able to touch a little bit on her experience as well.
Yeah, so my first semester at ISU was actually a normal semester. I was on campus. I was able to meet people and learn where to find certain resources. And then once the pandemic hit, I was home doing everything. And just based on the limited connections I was able to make in my first semester, I found people that were like me who were unable to find resources because they just didn't know who to talk to or who to contact. And so we all felt very isolated, and I wanted to help others like me still feel connected to each other and to the school. As a transfer student, we already kind of feel a little disconnected. It's a very unique experience, especially those coming in from out of state or non-traditional students like myself who may not know anybody to begin with. So when Morgan reached out to me, I was very excited to get this up and running.
Yes, so kind of jumping into what Transfer Redbirds is and why we decided to go ahead and create this. So Transfer Redbirds in general is a registered student organization at Illinois State. So it is a student organization run by students for students. And this one in particular is pretty much made up of all transfer students. We do have about 30% of our students as transfer students at Illinois State. So we have a fairly large population. So that really helped as we kind of wanted to create a group and a space for them to create their own community. So the whole purpose of our organization, as you can see here, really is to help acclimate our new transfer students to their environment and help really connect them with other members, university programs, other organizations, and the resources that Illinois State has to offer. The whole mission for us is really to provide enrichment to the transfer student community, again, really by allowing that easy access to those resources and trying to make their journey throughout college effortless. We really want to provide them with easy access to creating social connections, finding out ways to explore more about their major or learn more about the ways they can get involved in their community. And so we do a lot to really try and make sure that these students are feeling at home here at ISU. One of the things that I think is probably the best is our advocacy portion. As an organization, they have access to myself. I'm the advisor for the organization, and I'm on our transfer council here at Illinois State. So any issues that they may have throughout their admissions process, throughout registration, housing, or even just socializing on campus, they're welcome to bring that to me as an advisor, and then I can bring that back to our transfer council to bring up for a variety of folks around campus to discuss and see if there is something that we can do to hopefully fix that and make it a little bit more transfer friendly at ISU. And then in general, we do offer a lot of resources as an organization. We have an RSO and major liaison program where students are able to kind of sign up as representatives to talk a little bit more about their major or talk a little bit more about the organization that they're involved in. We want students to utilize Transfer Redbirds as a place to really find their family and find their fit, but then also explore out into other areas. So we don't want this to necessarily be the only place that they're finding and getting involved in. We also have a mentor program and also a community service program. So we've done quite a few community service projects these last few weeks with the holidays, and that has been really fulfilling for students to just take some time to better their community and again, get to know other students. But the really big one I want to highlight is our mentor-mentee program. That is something that we kind of kickstarted. That was the first initiative we really wanted to do when we started this organization. And it really is a space where we provide a new transfer student with an experienced transfer student to kind of help guide them throughout their experience during their first semester. So whether they want to really get super involved together and go grab coffee or maybe join another organization, or they just want to text some quick questions or FaceTime to get to know one another a little bit better, it's really a space for those students to make those connections while they're new here at Illinois State. One of the great things I always like to highlight is a success story we've had from our mentor program, which I'll let Jill talk about here on our next slide.
So one of our first mentees was actually Rose. She is on the right there. Sorry, I don't know how it looks to you guys. She's the one in the red shirt. And she is currently the vice president of Transfer Redbirds. So she started out as a mentee, just someone, looking for some guidance, looking to connect with other students who had similar experiences to her. Because something that I'll probably say a lot is that the transfer experience is in fact a unique one. And so she really found her place at Transfer Redbirds through that mentee program, and eventually became a vice president once the executive board that I was a part of graduated out. I had the pleasure of interviewing her as well. And she's really just kind of taken our vision and expanded it into something that I never imagined this organization would become.
Yes, and Rose also is now the chair of our mentor and mentee program. So she has taken that over and is kind of her baby this year. We are really proud to say we had 16 students a part of that during the fall semester, and recently had 5 new students sign up for the start of this spring semester. So we've had a lot of success in this, and we're looking forward to hosting mentor-mentee specific events to eventually allow those groups to mingle amongst the whole group versus just the 2 of them. So hopefully they can again expand that social aspect that they're kind of looking for here at Illinois State. With that, we'll kind of jump into where we got started as an organization, and Jill did a lot of the legwork for this, so I'm going to go ahead and let her take over and kind of break down how we kind of created what Transfer Redbirds is.
So Transfer Redbirds was it was already a registered organization at ISU when I started, and that was kind of how I was introduced to it. I was at a welcome day and I saw a booth that said transfer students. Someone handed me a flyer, and I just ended up meeting a group of kids for some coffee one day. And it was a really fun experience to kind of hang out with other transfer students. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a turnover. And so it kind of had fizzled out. And that's when I found out that the history of the organization had been very similar to that. You know, there would be a handful of students who would want to connect with other transfer students, but they didn't really have the support or the time or the drive to kind of keep it going. But it was something that I really felt strongly about, and I really wanted to keep going. So I did stay in connection with some of the students that I met that day, and we all kind of, you know, had our little Snapchat groups and things like that. I was having trouble getting into Snapchat, so they helped me with that a little bit. So as this semester waned on, we all kind of fizzled out. And then I actually came from I was the vice president of PTK, as some of you may have heard as transfer students. It's an honor society at community colleges. And I was a VP at my school in Kansas. And that organization actually kind of started out, that chapter, I'm sorry, started out kind of the same way, where it was just kind of in and out. It went through these, you know, ebbs and flows of engagement. And one thing that I was able to do at my community college was kind of get that back up and running. We engaged in the community a lot more. While during my time there, we did a bunch of fundraising events and volunteering. And we basically went from what is PTK to, oh, you're the PTK president. What are you guys doing this week? And that was something I was really proud of. So when I actually came to ISU, my intent was to start a PTK alumni chapter, because I knew of one at another university back in Kansas. And the gentleman who started that was going to kind of help me with the process at ISU. But I kind of had a hard time with that. And I found the more transfer students I talked to, the more that I felt connected to transfer students as a whole, and not just the transfer students that came from PTK. And so that's kind of why I wanted to see this organization flourish. So when it kind of fizzled out, as the next semester came along, Morgan actually reached out to me, I believe via Twitter, and asked if I knew anything about this organization. And we started talking. And Morgan herself was a transfer student and recognized the uniqueness of that experience. And so we started digging into the school's rules and how to re-register the organization, because that's the fun part, is you have to re-register every year and there's certain rules you have to follow. So she started digging into her resources. I'm a very resourceful person myself, so I was doing my own research. I reached out to some of those students that I had coffee with on that first day, and we found our president, vice president, and treasurer for that first semester. That was just the four of us. And we all had the same vision. You know, we want to create a support group for transfer students. We wanted to make sure that transfer students could connect with each other, and find ways to, as we said in our mission, you know, acclimate to campus and find your place on campus. So the hardest part, I would say, probably would be the marketing and the recruitment side of it, which we'll talk, I believe, a little bit more about later, but it requires a lot of time and sacrifices. We started up social medias. We created, some flyers that we would kind of send out in emails. We talked to all of our classmates. Oh, are you a transfer student? You should come check this out. Talk to our instructors to kind of try to gauge what needs were out there, because our needs may be different from another student's needs. So that's just kind of where it got started. As we move forward, we wanted to create a foundation to make sure that what happened with this organization in the past, that ebbs and flows of that, we wanted to make sure that we were able to create a foundation for future students to keep this going. And as I've talked to Morgan over these last couple of months, I've been really proud of what we've done so far. So one of the, oh, sorry.
No, I was just agreeing. Yes, they've continued to grow, and that's kind of where we'll be able to talk about some reflection at the end as well. So yeah, I'll let you continue here.
So from once we get started, you kind of have to create some building blocks and determine what steps you have to take to really make your vision come to fruition. One of the most important building blocks, in my opinion, just to get started, is to have support from the school. Thankfully, we had Morgan, who was just as passionate and just as, she had the same vision that we did. And being an employee of the school, as well as specifically for transfer students, made her the perfect person to be an advisor for this organization. She's extremely knowledgeable about the school. She has personal experience as the transfer experience, and she has a passion for helping students, and it just it shines every day. Additionally, I didn't even know until I met Morgan that there was a transfer council at the school. I had been to events, I believe they called Transfer Week, at the time that I was there. I'm not sure if that name has changed, but but when I was there, they would do transfer weeks, and I just thought it was, the school just trying to do something. But it turns out there's a whole council that we actually didn't know about. And so because of Morgan and that connection, we were able to connect students to the actual administration at the school. We weren't just a student organization trying to catch our footing. We were able to make a direct connection to the administration. Through that connection, we also found we actually started a, wow, I was the one who started it and I'm forgetting what it's called. I'm so sorry. We would have speakers. We started a speaker series. And one of our first speakers was the head of IT for the entire school. And so that gave us an even more direct connection to administration. So you really have to get that support from the school, because without that, if you don't feel supported, it can be a little discouraging. So once you have that support from the school and you're able to make those connections, I'm so sorry. Once you have that support from the school and you're able to make those connections, the enthusiasm from the students is really important. And I'll let Morgan touch on that because she speaks with so many transfer students every day.
Yes, thank you, Jill. So with that, obviously, excuse me, enthusiasm from the students is very needed. So you don't want to go through all this work to create an organization and then find out that the students don't really need it or don't really want it. I doubt that would be the experience, because I know, again, as research has shown, many students, especially coming in the transfer route, they're looking for ways to make those connections. And so seeking out students like Jill and finding those other students who have that desire to be able to create an organization like this and kind of get it started off the ground is really one of those building blocks to kind of help you start to move forward. As you get that enthusiasm from some of those key students, as those students become hopefully your student leaders within the organization, you'll want to start gauging additional interest. So for maybe the general transfer population, as Jill had mentioned, from professors, from faculty and staff around your institution, really just figuring out ways that students are going to benefit from the organization. Are they looking for social aspects? Are they looking for resources? Are they looking for ways to improve their resume or get more involved in the community? So again, kind of figuring out what it is that is really going to be needed for those students and hopefully give them the most interest in your organization overall. With that, that's kind of what we like to call it a tree effect. You're branching out to as many different people as you know, kind of spreading the word, as Jill had said, talking to the classmates, having those student leaders maybe speak in some of their classes, speak at different welcome week events or orientations, things like that, to really get that interest out there. And then once you've kind of gotten that established, really creating those effective lines of communication between the advisor and the officer team before you get started, which Jill did a really great job of that as the president for the organization. So I'll kind of let her talk about ways we did that, and hopefully those can be some tips that you can use to implement this for yourself.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that you can communicate in modern day 2022. I feel like a lot of people try to fall back on just email. It's good old fashioned form of communication, but one thing that we struggled with was how often, if we're being honest, how often students actually check their email. And so when you're trying to build an organization like this, there almost has to be constant communication while you're getting that foundation going. So we actually found that email didn't work for us in the beginning. As we became more comfortable with each other and started to build those foundations and really get our footing, email, became a very effective form of communication so that we could send documents back and forth. But we kind of tested a few different lines. There's a couple of different, messaging apps, such as GroupMe was a really big one that we tried. We actually ended up still using that to communicate with the membership of Transfer Redbirds, that we started a group chat. But for the leadership, we actually ended up using Teams. ISU utilizes Microsoft 365, and one of the softwares on there is Microsoft Teams, as many of you may be familiar with. And one thing that I loved about Teams is that you could have it on your computer, and you could also download an app on your phone. You can share files on Teams. You can have, just SharePoint drives where you can work together simultaneously on presentations, create flyers together, work on, if we were generating letters, we could just do all of that in one place. So that's something that really worked for us. As I said, there's a lot of different types out there. So really what's important is that you just kind of find what works best for you and your group of students. Every group is going to be different. And once we were able to communicate with each other on a more frequent basis, because we were all different majors too, so we didn't always see each other, even when we were on campus, which unfortunately due to COVID wasn't very often. But even when we didn't see each other very much, so that kind of helped us as well. But once we were able to communicate with each other effectively is when we really started to gather ideas for marketing and finding members and getting our name out there. And so some of what the thing with marketing and getting your name out there is that it does require a little bit of sacrifice to get going. And when I say sacrifice, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. You're going to get, you're going to put flyers out there and send out emails that no one's going to reply to, but you just kind of have to keep pushing it out there. And so we would print flyers. Our school has resources that allows you to print so many flyers per, I believe it's per day or per week or something to that effect. And so we'd print those out and get those approved and put them up around. Our advisor would utilize her own resources to reach out, whether it was again through email. If you have the ability to do fundraising, or if the school is able to assist you in funding of any sort, get some merch. For our group, as a non-traditional student, I was lucky enough to be supported financially through my fiance. And so we were actually able to donate some merch for the group. So we got these tumbler cups that had our logo on it. A logo that was actually created by one of our executive members. So you really want to utilize the creativity of your students to find ways to get your name out there. I think you guys have stickers now too.
We do, yes. That is that kind of leads really well into the next slide here, which is kind of opportunities and reflections and ways that we've continued to grow. And in one way, it is with our items. So as Jill had mentioned, utilizing funding from the institution, their first, I think, year it was, they entered a contest with one of our departments on campus and won some funding for the year. And so we use that to purchase stickers for the organization. And then more recently, we've been able to actually get some additional tumblers, some notebooks, some winter hats. So we've really been able to kind of not only, establish ourselves on campus, but really create a presence amongst the students as well. So some of the things that we really wanted to just reflect back on here that kind of either we didn't know about the first year, or maybe we weren't ready for the first year, that we've now been able to kind of nail down, starting with nailing down a schedule. Our first year, we're still kind of finding our footing, obviously, figuring out how to reestablish this organization on campus and what it was that students wanted. And so it was very common that the week before the meeting, we were planning out what the activity was and how we were going to do it, where we were going to get the items we needed. So really utilizing any breaks that your university offers to plan ahead for upcoming semesters, to help you reach out to departments for potential prizes or for speakers, things like that, with plenty of time is just going to help not only you and your stress levels, but also the students and the organization, as you can plan ahead and let the students know well in advance what it is that you plan to hold. We were able to establish a time over our winter break this last semester with our new executive board team to plan out our entire spring schedule. This year, they're meeting once a week, every Monday at 7 p.m. So we were able to break down an entire schedule for the semester. We right now hold mostly socials, but have, as Jill mentioned, a speaker series that we're still continuing, bringing in a different speaker from around campus at least once a month. And then we also have folks that are our RSO or major liaisons that will do quick 5-minute presentations at the start of our meetings to give a little bit more information about an organization they're part of, or maybe the major that they're in, just to really kind of expand the knowledge for all of our students. As I'd mentioned, we've really been able to establish a presence at ISU throughout this last year. Jill and our first officer group were really vital in kind of creating that foundation for the students this year to just kind of soar. They didn't have to go through all of that back end work to make sure that, yes, we're officially registered and we have a bank account set up and we know how to move forward. We've been able to just kind of build upon everything they did that first year and really expand as an organization. So I always recommend, if you have ways to incorporate your organization into the university events as a whole, that's a really great way to spread your name and then also get a little bit more recognition from other university partners. One way we've been able to do this year is we've actually been able to play a part in our transfer registration and orientation days. So when our new students do come in for their advising appointments to get everything set up for their upcoming semester, we've been able to have a space available at an information fair, and then also even hold a social where students can join us for cookies and snacks, win some of those prizes that I'd mentioned, and really just kind of get to know other transfer students that are currently at ISU and pick their brain about what their experience is like. And then finally, I think probably the one that's the most important, especially for just the generation that we're in today, is keeping up with social media and interacting with the followers. So that is something that, again, during our first year, we were really just trying to establish that presence on social media. So creating our accounts and getting some, general content out there about who we were and getting some of those initial followers. But at this point, I am very excited to say that we've been able to gain close to 300 followers on our Instagram account, close to 200 on our Twitter, and over 500 people in our Facebook group. So we've definitely been able to not only expand that presence, but then also interact with our followers in more meaningful ways now that we have a little bit of a larger group. So one of the ways we've been able to do that is one, through National Transfer Student Week. That is something that we played a very vital role in this year throughout the university. We had different giveaways throughout the week. We had students that were doing transfer takeovers every single day, kind of highlighting their days on campus, going over resources, whether it was a campus job they held, or how to use the bus system around town, or maybe some of the best food and restaurants right near campus. So that is just one way we've kind of been able to utilize that. And then also this semester, we've continued those as Transfer Tuesday talks. So every other Tuesday, we have an officer who takes over our Instagram account and just really kind of is there as a resource to answer questions. So we allow students to send us in any questions that they may have, whether it is related to a university resource, a space on campus, or what our next meeting might be. It's kind of an open space for them to really connect with our current officers and build that community with us at Illinois State. So those are just a few of the opportunities that we found and some of the reflection that we've had after kind of establishing ourselves as an organization and really being able to build upon that after this first year. With that, I do want to thank you all for joining us. We do still have some time, so I wanted to give us some time to go through some questions if you all have any. But I also wanted to mention that you can always connect with us if there are any questions that you wanted to go over at a different time. My contact information is up here, and then also the Transfer Redbirds organization is housed on our Redbird Life website, which you do have access to. Anyone can access that at redbirdlife.illinoisstate.edu and just by searching Transfer Redbirds in the organization tab. So with that, I'll stop sharing, and you're welcome to use the chat feature, unmute yourself, and I think Holly will kind of coordinate that.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Go ahead and enter those questions into the chat or raise your hand, unmute yourself. Thank you to ISU for doing some really great work. Yep. Do you mind putting your emails in the chat? Thank you.
Absolutely. And I honestly would also love to hear if there are any organizations that you all may have similar to this at your institution, whether you're at a 4-year or a 2-year. Any info you have to share to help us would be great.
Morgan, can you talk a little bit about that first stage that you talked about with campus buy-in, building a budget, reaching out to administration, making sure that they're on board with how important transfer is, and how you get that type of feedback. Can you talk about that process?
Absolutely. Yeah. I know that is probably one of the scariest roadblocks, at least for me, was, going up and asking someone for money and how are we going to get this established? I think it really helped that ISU already had a transfer council established and understood the importance of our transfer student community at ISU. So it was something that I think the rest of the council was kind of expecting when I brought it up to one of our meetings and mentioned that this was something I wanted to take on. And if they were potentially, open to supporting me with this. And thankfully, they were all very, very excited for that and thought that it would be a really good move for the organization to be reestablished as our transfer student community kept growing. It also helped, as Jill had mentioned, connecting with our head of IT. He was he's obviously great into data. And so he was very open to pulling some information for us and really just helping kind of make our case as to why the transfer student population was important and why we felt that this was something that needed to be on campus. And then from there, it all really kind of fell into place. We had a lot of campus partners within like our student involvement and Dean of Students office, also within like welcome week activities that were reaching out to have us involved because they wanted our presence, because they knew there were transfer students that wanted that community. So it really was the big first step of, just biting your tongue and going in for it and making that request, which is obviously scary, but obviously well worth it in the long run.
Yeah, great point. And as you mentioned, data, they always want to see the numbers when you do that, make that approach. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
We do have a kind of a follow-up question and a great question. I know that I struggled with at my previous institution, but along with your response, and every school is obviously different, how do you navigate the admissions staff and the new student staff and or student life staff? So you're working with all these different organizations, departments. Sometimes you may be a decentralized campus. Any roadblocks navigating those structures or suggestions on how to navigate?
That's definitely a good question, because we are also split with, admissions versus orientation and transition services. I will say, again, I'll go back to the transfer council, is we do have some folks that work within those departments. And so I think we all have an understanding that, to really better the student experience, we have to work together, and we have to, go a little bit out of our comfort zone to create some of those experience for students. So thankfully, I haven't hit too many roadblocks up to this point in terms of getting involved in like the student life aspect and student involvement or the clubs, things like that. So far, most around campus have been very responsive to it. And if anything, have really wanted to bring us in and kind of help expand the organization overall. Jill, did you have any, I know you did a lot of the outreach that first year in terms of getting like speakers set up, things like that. Were there any roadblocks that you felt you hit?
In all honesty, I just think the most important thing there is the kind of going back to the communication thing. The students who are going to be running the organization do need to kind of have a knack for reaching out. There's a little bit of awkwardness there, but having that support from Morgan. Anytime I sent an email to a faculty or administration person, I always CC'd Morgan on it. So having the support and the ability to just reach out. There were times where I would just go to Illinois State's website and go to their staff list, and I would just blindly send an email. Kind of like cold calling. I would just say, hey, I've never talked to you before. You have no idea who I am, but I'm with Transfer Redbirds. We're trying to do a thing. So really just kind of putting yourself out there, like Morgan said. But I don't think we had any major roadblocks. There may have been, some delayed responses to emails. And really the way that we got around that was just a follow-up email. If I went a week without hearing from someone, I would just go to the sent email, hit reply all, and just wanted to follow up and, make sure you got this email kind of thing. But yeah, just putting yourself out there and being consistent was I think how we got around that.
Great question.
Yeah, thank you again, Grace, for that. That was good.
Any other questions?
Just really quick, while we're waiting for the next question, I just had a memory pop into my head that I kind of wanted to reiterate the connecting with other students, even if they're not necessarily transfer students themselves. Because of how much we marketed ourselves, for example, this background that I have, I used it every class that I attended, so I always had this up. We actually had a couple of students reach out to us because they had a class project that they had to do for, I believe it was a marketing student, and they wanted to create brochures for us. And I want to say of the group, maybe one of them was a transfer student. He had never actually been involved with us, but he had heard about us and wanted to help us out while also, benefiting himself by getting an assignment done. And he did an amazing job. But that's just kind of an example of how just putting yourself out there and marketing your name and getting your name out there can really benefit both the organization as well as other students on campus too.
What an excellent point, Jill. Sometimes it's just the small things, like having this virtual background at every single one of your classes. That's so smart, and what an impact something so small can make. It's really incredible. Very cool. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions entered in the chat. I did just enter the link for entering PD hours. Just a reminder that you do need to complete one form for each session that you attended if you're interested in receiving those. But a big thank you to our presenters, Morgan and Jill, today for sharing their knowledge about Transfer Redbirds and some of the great things that they're doing on the ISU campus for transfer students. So again, thank you all. The recording will be on the website and sent to you all after. Have a good day.